I need some traction. You need some traction.
Hey everybody, Lloyd Lobo here, co-founder at Boast AI and Traction Conf. This webinar is brought to you by Boast AI Launch Academy in partnership with BCF Ventures, Lazaridis Institute, and Founder Institute. I am super excited for today's session because it's about how to build a company to $10 million on limited budget, bootstrap with no outside funding. And very few people talk about this, right? I'm based in Silicon Valley. Everyone's like on this hamster wheel of fundraise, and go boom or bust. But there is another way. And Steve has done it with Verblio, and he's taken the company to 10 million revenue with small, lean team, limited budget. And that's what we all want to know, right? Not everyone is in Silicon Valley. Not every business is venture scale. And even venture scale businesses, they focus on the wrong things in an effort to blitz scale and grow faster than they can chew. And then they end up shutting down. So Steve's going to talk all about that. Steve brings more than 20 years of startup, Fortune 500, and nonprofit experience. And previously, he's worked at venture-backed companies and he's seen the whole ride. So this has been something new for him, taking over a bootstrap company and then growing it almost like venture scale. So Steve, how have you been doing in Corona time?
I think all of us start with a C minus average for every day, and then we just work our way from there. I would say that I'm surviving as well as we all can.
How did you end up with a bootstrap company despite working at venture-backed companies before?
It's an interesting ride, and I feel really fortunate to have landed at this place. So I moved back to Colorado, which is my hometown, from San Francisco after doing the Bay Area tech scene for quite some time. I moved back in 2010 when second kid was on his way. And for anybody who's lived in San Francisco and had children, I think this story probably resonates with you. And then I looked around the tech scene in Colorado, figuring out what would be my next thing. I had spent 10 years doing marketplace services, combining that, what I think is really magical, a great pool of marketplace of skilled labor with the SaaS technology. How do you do differentiated, cool things with that? So I built new business models off that for 10 years. And then moved to Colorado, and here you do what you can do versus what you are built to do. And I was very lucky enough to find two founders who had built a marketplace services background company for content creation, and the CEO was stepping down and saying he needed somebody to scale a business. Does anyone here in Colorado know how to scale a business like this? And that's how I was lucky enough to become a first-time CEO.
I'm super excited to learn from you, and I am going to be sitting here and taking some notes, so take it away.
So I'm going to talk to everyone about strategies for reigniting growth for the second act of a company, how we sparked the second phase of Verblio's growth by reimagining and leveraging the open talent platforms and all its possibilities. So this is really how we get started. So we're going to start with introductions. I'll talk a little about myself and a little about an introduction to Verblio. I'll share the growth challenge that we faced, and then our three-step plan. Then I think that plan is something that can be used at other companies as you're thinking about growth initiatives, whether it's venture-backed or whether it's bootstrapped. But this is particularly focused on bootstrap companies. And I'm going to add lots of interludes along the way, which are my structured tangents of learnings as part of this process. So this is me. I gave you guys a quick introduction. I've been doing this for actually 25 years of building and leading new product innovation. 7 companies that I've started or led were marketplace SaaS businesses. So I've been doing this combination for quite some time. This is the second time I took over a company from founders. The first time I was actually working directly for the founder and leading the business. And this is the first time I took over and ran the whole business. And I've been CEO of Verblio for 4 years. On the personal side, I have 2 boys who are both fans of not being socially isolated. They're 9 and 12. They're all in the house right now, and they might appear on this webinar at any moment, I'm sure, like yours. I lived in Santiago, Chile for a year, and I also lived in Rio de Janeiro, and I have a closet desire to become Latin American rock star someday. And then one of my big passions is I'm a diehard, avid, ultimate Frisbee player. My college team went to nationals in 1991. And most recently, my 40s and over team qualified for national tournament again. And that was 27-year gap between qualifying, which I've been told is the 4th longest stint in history as far as the gap goes. So fun facts. And now a little about Verblio. So we are a marketplace platform that is a combination of 3,000 highly vetted freelance writers in our SaaS platform. We have 1,000 active clients. We have grown 400% since I took over 4 years ago. We write for 38 industries. Our 39th industry is other. And we ask clients to self-identify, and 52% of our clients select other, which means that we write very deep vertical expertise, but it also means we write for the long tail of all the niches that are out there. We have taken zero investment dollars to date. So everything we do is completely bootstrapped. This year alone, we will have written 80,000 pieces of unique content with 9 different content types. And those range from something as highly technical as attorney edited content, which we will write in 2,000 words, to publisher content, which we do 1,200 pieces of publisher content per month. And we have written over 100 posts about Kim Kardashian this year alone. So quite a range. So what I'm here to talk to you about is creating a new model for content at scale in every niche. So this is our vertical, and this is what the core problem that we solve, which is content marketing is one of the core channels of all modern marketers. Most people are aware of this. I wrote an article previously called "Content Was King and then it got promoted." This is only more so in recent and post-COVID times, and for multiple reasons. But one of the big challenges is conquering writing one good piece of content is not the big challenge. You can find one good writer on Upwork, on Fiverr to do that for you, or you can write it yourself. Being able to do this consistently and at scale is a real challenge, and it hadn't been conquered in the industry, and that's what we're trying to do. When I looked at this industry, I really see, which is the concept of platform for content creation. There's a concept in in project management that many of you have heard of, which is the iron triangle, which is, and if you've ever had a product manager, I'm sure they have reported up to you and told you that this is your limit. Every project, you can have speed, you can have low cost, or you can have quality, but you can only have 2 of those. And that is something that I've heard many times. That is really the way that the content creation platform industry was working. And this is something that I believe needs to be broken, because I believe if you think about an innovative business model and how to address these platforms differently, with a combination of marketplace and SaaS, you can provide quality, and that's what we're trying to do. This is the reason that this is an interesting story for you to hear about, which is our monthly revenue has gone from 175,000 to 660,000 in those 4 years, which is basically $2 million run rate business up to an $8 million run rate business. Our revenue per account has gone up by 265%. The number of accounts over 1,000 has gone up 1,400% plus. And our writer pay, which is a really important part of our values, has gone up 400%. And we have many writers that are making $3,000 to $5,000 a month right now. And our goal is to continue to drive very motivating and exciting jobs in the freelancer world and to be a good player in this space, which I think has ample opportunity to do so. So how do you do that? How do you go from a $2 million company to an $8 million company while bootstrapped and rebuilding the model for freelance work? So that is the formula that I hope to show you today. So before we get too far, I want to talk about how I fell in love with marketplace models. You'll see a few of these interludes along the way. For any of you who have heard me speak before, I have a lot of tangents, and I'm just trying to structure those tangents into the quality learnings. So let's talk about the open talent revolution. So there are 48% of US adults are engaged as open talent currently, or as freelancers, where I like the rebranding of freelancers to open talent. There's $2 billion managed by platforms to do so. This is only growing. I've seen that the majority, I think it's 55% plus in the next 5 years, are going to be engaged in the freelance economy. So this is a big part of where the workforce is going. I believe that every ecosystem of a company is now going to have you're going to have your full-time employees, you're going to have your contractors, and you're going to have your strategic partners of freelancers that are going to be a big part of it. So up until now, there's really 2 dominant forms of marketplaces. You have your Uber model, which is basically providing a service based on the technology, but the real focus is The humans are commoditized and basically become widgets in the system as the platform delivers the service. And the second is more individual based, which is a matchmaking platform like Upwork, Fiverr, Craigslist even, where they will connect you to the right level of talent, maybe at the right price. Then you have all of the challenges recreated of availability, training, onboarding. They're not ready to go and you're doing most of the work on your other side. Open talent platforms, which I call Marketplace 2.0, combine both of those functions, which is marketplace plus SaaS. There's really a continuum of workers of freelancers. You have kind of the Uber drivers, which is commoditized labor. There's no real skill set that you need besides driving. And then you have super high end, kind of like your fractional CFO, fractional CMO, strategic consultants. And in between, that mid-level kind of like highly skilled labor that is critical to performing a business function has not really found a home. And I think that's really a big part of what we're looking for. So what we're trying to do is trying to find a highly curated group of freelancers with one distinct skill that we combine with a SaaS platform and all the benefits of SaaS, which is going deep into one work type, making that as valuable as possible, and then offering it on demand in a flexible, scalable way. You put those two together and you have an ecosystem partner that you can integrate into your company to provide a full service solution as opposed to using the marketplaces as tools. So this is Tyler. He's an example of why I think all of this is so compelling. So Tyler is a lawyer. He lives in Montana, and he also loves writing. You could never personally, unless you are an incredibly well-backed company, afford to have Tyler do all of your legal writing for you. But Tyler likes to work on our platform and he likes to engage with our legal writers. He's one of our editors. And you can access talent like this in the long tail if you're using a platform where you're providing him enough work without having to engage him full time. So some of the benefits of why this is so compelling is that marketplaces have benefits on both sides that should really drive value. And if you can bring them together in the right model. So for organizations, you're looking to immediately access this talent pool. And you're trying to do it in a way that scales with your company based on what you need, as opposed to, I call this what you should do versus what you can do. How do you get onboarded faster so that you're moving, so that you hit the market quick? How do you do that with low transaction costs so you're not starting up a new division, going to your CFO, starting an entire new expense line? In the right size solution for where you are. And on the talent side, there's also a ton of need out there. So I get asked frequently pretty much on every podcast I've ever been on, I've been asked, where do you start with the supply of labor or the demand for that labor? And it is always with the demand, because there are so much talent out there that is looking for good work from home, remote opportunities on a freelance basis that can deliver quality. They are looking to pursue their passions. They are not looking to spend all of their time doing business development. Any given professional has not been trained on how to hustle and do biz dev. They want to do their quality work. They also want an opportunity to grow, to expand and have career development. And they're looking for a community. And they also want a variety of work. If you're working in-house, you could be writing over 100 pieces about one technical product every single month until you burn out and need to change. So having a variety of work is actually pretty compelling. So I'm going to take all of that and say, so what does that do? What's an interesting example that you guys can take home? And I'm going to give you an exhilarating insurance call center example that pretty much changed my life. So I was working for a company called LiveOps, which was one of the original marketplace services companies. We used to call this crowdsourcing. It's picked up kind of a pejorative connotation over the years, and I really like open talent or marketplace 2.0 right now. You'll see that I use them interchangeably as I try to figure out which one I want. And so my job was, LiveOps was a virtual call center. It had 20,000 home-based agents and a SaaS call center platform that they were operating off of that was doing some pretty unique and interesting things with a bunch of the original Netscape guys and pretty all-star crew that had a lot of momentum in the mid-2000s. And so I was in charge of innovating new business models on top of this platform. So we had our core business, and my first was expansion revenue. How do we offer other products and services to increase the value of every client? And so one of my vendors was Transamerica. And so as a classic biz dev person, I'm always looking for more opportunities to expand with them. And I said, now that you've been my vendor for so long, what would it take to convince you to become my client? Which means that I would take your insurance calls. And they said, well, it's actually a lot harder than you think. You would need a large pool of licensed call center insurance agents. And what that means is each one of them costs $8,000 to license. You have to do that every single year. They have to be licensed in every single state that they would take calls from, and they have to be appointed by that company in every single state to do so. So, come back to us when you have that, with, of course, the impression that we would never do that. So we sent out a survey to our mostly stay-at-home mom workforce of 20,000 agents. We said, any chance that some of you are licensed insurance agents? And I think 400 plus wrote back to us and said they were actually licensed insurance agents doing the call center work on their spare time. And so what does that mean? That means that we did not know that we were one of the largest licensed insurance call center agents or agent platforms in the world. And I believe that that is the power of the model. So we went back, we sold that into them, we built some technology around it and services and turned that into a pretty significant revenue stream. It also went back to our client because they could never drive inbound calls for sales before. They always had to do outbound where they could schedule when they were calling. So it totally inverted their business model, gave them a complete competitive advantage in the market. And it opened my eyes to the opportunities you could do if you nail this value proposition of great talent plus SaaS technology. Cool. Interlude 2. We'll take a little time off of the business proposition and talk about what it takes to take over from founders. So here's one of my big lessons now that I've done it a couple times, is moving into someone else's company or their division, if you're as I'm sure is relevant in many different ways, it's like moving into a well-lived-in house. So some of it's amazing. You have access to a great location. It's a beautiful structure. It has a vision of what it's going to be in the future. And I am deeply grateful to my founders because I've never started a company that's made it to 2 million. And I realize the sacrifice that it takes to get there. But it's also like moving into my first apartment in San Francisco that we bought. And I thought I bought the ugliest apartment in the history of the world. It had been lived in since the 1940s by this elderly Polish couple. All of the drapes were mustard colored. There were sconces on the wall. There was carpet in the bathroom. All sorts of random objects were pink. And the realtor had given me this vision of what like the end state looks like of how beautiful this apartment was going to be someday. And I was living by that vision and then realizing just how much when you're a bootstrapped company or when you're poor and moving into your first San Francisco apartment because you gave all your money and your down payment, you only have a few decisions you can make at a time and you just have to move towards that end vision as you go. So here are the 3 steps. These are not going to be revolutionary to all of you, but I'm going to walk you through the decision-making process of each one. The first is to evaluate exactly where you are, build your vision. The second is to decide and plan, and I will turn this into, the way that I did this was not quite Soviet era 5-year plans, but 2-year plans of what I thought would be steps to get to the next level. And then 3 is where I put the majority of the effort, which is execution, and then rinse, repeat as we iterate. The execution, I don't think gets nearly enough glory. I went to Kellogg for Business School, and we spend 99% of our time talking about 1% of our problems or challenges, which is the big inflection points of a company. Where do you raise money? What's your strategy? How do you go to market? And then what I found while leading a bootstrap company in particular is that 99% of what success looks like is making great micro decisions every single day, showing up, bringing your values to the company, and making sure that your people understand what we need to do to make it to the next step. It's really hard to write a great story about that, and there's very few books about it, but it is core to our story. The next step is, what's the big goal? What parts of the remodel are urgent and which parts can wait? Where are we going to focus? So the first thing you do, like any good strategic person, is you review the vision of the company where you're at, and I'll show you our analysis afterwards. So we're going to define our North Star and what we're moving to, and we're going to repeat that. But at the highest level, I think one of the areas which is dangerous to get caught up on is you should know that you don't know the entire story right now. I think when you look at the end of your strategy, there's well, if anyone's made an annual plan and a strategy to get there, and you get to the end of the year and then you nail exactly what you said you were going to do, you're pretty deeply surprised because there's a lot of, you're giving your best guess, but you also don't really know what's going to happen. So the market had changed since we took over this company, or sorry, since the company began in 2010, and the brand promise of the company had changed too. And so we had a choice of whether we were going to rapidly evolve or shrink and go away, which we were not going to do. So I assume that many of you have seen this, which is the MarTech landscape. I don't know if this is the MarTech 5000 or 8000, which is where I think it is now. But this is a landscape of all of the players in the marketing technology space and all of the logos who go there. The second column is content and experience. These are all of the different companies that we are currently competing with in some way or another. You'll notice that you can't see our logo in there, even though we are in there. And there are a lot of logos, which means we're bootstrapped and we need to stand out from a lot of these companies and find our way and what's our different path and our different value proposition quickly, or we are going to get buried even deeper into this landscape. This is where we ended up, which was our 2010 analysis. What was the brand promise at the time? So when the founder started this company, it was founded by a journalist and a tech co-founder. And the journalist started this with a really great spirit, which was he was coming in from the supply side. He wanted great opportunities for other journalists in the next world, and how is he going to start those? And at the time, writing wasn't actually that important to score for SEO. So the purpose of creating content was at the time very SEO focused. How do you rank on Google? And that was the whole story. And you didn't have to do too much. So we had one product. It was $79 a month for one blog a week. That was 250 words. And if you don't speak word length, it's like 4 or 5 paragraphs. It can be pretty much about anything as long as you have stuff the keywords in there, and then Google will help you rank and give you credit for that. There was little focus on brand. SMBs were mostly doing this themselves, and the brand proposition was we were going to do this for SMBs at a low price and help them compete with the big guys. And having a service marketplace worked perfectly fine. So this is where I put a lot of my focus when I first came on board as a CEO, which is the market has evolved and our needs have evolved. So Google, as of starting in the mid 2010s, and especially now, has only increased their need for high quality content, and we needed to move in that direction. We are writing for humans now, longer form, and I'll give you an example of that. When I came on board, less than 6% of our content was written of over 1,000 words, which we consider kind of like middle to longer form, and now it's over 70% of our content in just 4 years. Second is that the market cares about brand. The CEO didn't used to focus on reading the blogs. That wasn't that important. Now everyone's looking at it and everything has to be very consistent with the rest of the brand. One of the big transformations was that SMBs were originally doing a lot of the marketing for themselves, and agencies have grown so much so that there are marketing experts out there that many of these SMBs leverage, and that we should be looking at them first. And we were seeing that as a growing category of our clients. And then marketers are looking for a full solution. So this is where one of the biggest areas where we planted our flag, which was most of the models out there for content creation, to me, looked at like a Costco model versus a solution model. And what I'm thinking here is if your goal is to create ongoing, high quality, consistent, good meals at your home, you have the Costco model where you can buy a membership, but it's all up to you to show up, to find the ingredients, go home and make it all. Or you can have something like a Blue Apron or one of the other home delivery services who has already created all the packages of all of the ingredients, given you the recipe, and then you can assemble it yourself in your house, which to me is a solution subscription approach to make sure you get it done and get it done with quality. And that's what I wanted to move us towards. basically moving from becoming a content creation tool to a content solution for the next generation. So the next phase of the evaluation, I don't think will surprise anyone, was really a SWOT. So what did I find? I'm going to walk you through kind of my evaluation process so you can see kind of how we made our decisions and then how we executed against them, back to the focus there. So on the strengths, we had a $2 million run rate business with subscription revenue is unbelievable gift for my founders. The organic traffic was really impressive, which is we were bringing on 1,000 new clients per year with no outbound salesperson. And we were doing that because our journalist co-founder was writing 5 blogs a week or having the rest of the team supplemented, and just went at aggressively created consistent content, which is a gift that benefits us to this day. The writer loyalty is truly impressive. Of having a crowd that loves your company really helps set you apart, and it also creates more motivated product. And the last is an innovative business model where they looked at the existing model and flipped it on its head, which is most platforms are very command and control, which is like there's two ways to go about it. You have command and control, which is, hey, I got a writing assignment, I'm giving it to you. And another is more of a, you select a writer based on their profile, you look at them, you select them, and it's a very kind of laborious fashion, and it's not based on their actual work. And so they inverted that, which created much better marketplace economics, which means that the writer chooses the client, all of the feedback goes into the system, and you're building a smaller team of writers. All of those things I think are critical ingredients. The challenges are, like every company that's reevaluating their stage, what got us here won't get us there type of problems on the product, people, and processes. Our product was not differentiated, and it wasn't even a higher quality product than others out there. Our brand was actually negative for our, had negative value for our new digital marketing agency clientele. We had minimal pipeline. So our old brand was actually called Blog Mutt. So there was challenges with the blog side, and the Mutt side as we try to evolve to the next generation. We had really minimal pipeline of sales sales opportunities, and also of new products in our roadmap. There was no strategy to immediately jump in on and say, this is how we're going to get there. And most importantly, back to the Bootstrap story, we had no accessible cash. So we were not a very attractive option for investors at that time. So that wasn't even an option. So we had to figure out how we were going to do this on our own. So once we figure out that vision, step 3 is the people, processes, and product. To me, this is like the execution model. Looking at our company, we had all 3 of these areas were successfully off the ground, and where you'd expect an early stage to be, which is that they all got us there, and we all need to be iterated on and get there fast. I've talked a lot about bootstrapping so far, so I'll talk a little more about what I've learned about what it means to run a bootstrapped company. Lloyd talked about how this is my first bootstrapped company that I've worked on. Everything else has been investor-led. And what is different? So some of these might be logical, and some of them you just might feel more once you take over. So the first is that the first lesson is that in a VC-backed company or another investor company, you are looking for a market opportunity. You're figuring out what it takes to seize that opportunity, and you're investing everything you can proactively to get there. In a bootstrap company, you invest retroactively, which means that you have to actually win and then survive before you can invest to fully fund what you needed to do. So you eat what you kill, which means that you have to find quick ways to make revenue so that you can fund that growth. And what does that mean on the impact on your decision-making side? It means you can make a lot fewer bets, that those bets need to be incremental and they need to pay off. So instead of taking a 1 out of 10% chance that this will work for $1 billion, you kind of have to go for a very different route of making sure that you survive and keep incrementally getting there. I think that builds really good discipline. I think it's a really good skill set to have. I think it's the right way to grow a business for certain types of business that don't have that giant unicorn immediate potential. It's also part of one of our core values, which is we star in the quirky and scrappy show, which means you just have to be innovative and scrappy and put it all together. And I think that breeds good culture and pays off. And then my example is we do not invest in nice slide decks as part of these sacrifices. We invest in great stories and plans. So I apologize for any for a lack of visuals in my slide deck presentation. Now that we've gone through, we've evaluated what stage we're at, what assets do we have, what do we build on? There's a critical question that comes for growth that will come to most of us, which is, do you focus on product first, or do you focus on sales and marketing? My big decision was to focus very heavily on product. We actually have the same number of sales and marketing people at our company now at $8 million than we did at 2. And I think that there's a really good reason for that. So I'm going to walk you through kind of our first 2-year plan. I'll walk you through a little of the second 2-year plan when you got there and take you where we left off. And we'll keep going through each criteria by the vision, the people, product, and processes at each step. I might go a little out of order. So the vision is back to the original, how I started this presentation, where there's a deep need for high quality content at scale for every niche. No one has cracked that code, and I want us to first. And then we are going to focus the entire company on one main vertical, which is digital agencies, but we'll also focus on a second tier of all digital marketers, where we're going at digital agencies first. You're going to see the same vision in every version of our plan, plan 2 and plan 3, as the vision doesn't really change that much. It iterates slightly, and it's the execution of the people, processes, and product that really evolve. I like to talk about people first, which is when you come on board, you're transforming a culture, and you're also trying to figure out, how am I going to bring this new strategic plan into life, into existence? And the people is the way that you're going to get there. So Jim Collins and Good to Great focused on putting the right people on the bus first. I think he was thinking about a much bigger bus than a smaller bootstrapped company. At this level of company, so we're about 23 people now, with a team of 1,000 plus freelancers. Our choices were basically, you can choose A-level talent or utility players, or you can choose somebody who's been there and seen it before, a higher level executive. So I had an opportunity to bring on one high-level executive who happens to be my right-hand person for the last 15 years, who's now worked with me at 7 companies, somebody that I know can implement, can model the type of behaviors I'm looking for, the processes, and also can train and hire the next round of great talent. Everyone else on the team has to be young A-plus talent players who are complete utility players and figure things out. And how do we make sure that happens? Is we focus relentlessly on our hiring with our values. We made that a core part of our procedure, and I think it's one of the most critical parts to this day. And one of the questions that I always ask myself after I interview someone is, did they make me feel more energized after that conversation? And that's one of our top hiring criteria. In addition to all those other benefits, there's also benefits on not having a lot of turnover at your company. If you're not hiring too much and not replacing those people, the institutional knowledge continues to move forward, and it's hard to measure the value of great retention, but it is just critical to how we executed and created this plan. So processes, for me, I have a very different take on processes. So at Bootstraps, I was once told by another CEO that processes at a bootstrap company is like wearing the wrong size clothes all the time. Some are way too tight and way too big, and you have the wrong ones on all parts of your body. And that's just what it's like to go through a growth stage. For me, great people figure out what the right processes are at the right time. And when great people are getting frustrated, that's the right time to create more process. The product. So we were thinking of this in 3 phases. One is we need to build the best writer group in the business. We need to become much more focused on how do we curate these writers. So our current pool, we accept about 4.5% of writers make it through our writing test. And that's just for the opportunity to engage our clients in their work. The second was to focus on the rebuilding all of the business model innovations, how to bring those to life and put them in our platform. And the last is that creating content is a deeply friction-filled process. So how do we create the friendliest content creation platform, which actually is close to a pleasure to create content with writers as possible? And so in sum, that's all of the plan 1 of the first 2 years together. And then we just keep upgrading and continuously iterating on each one of those product, people, and processes until we make it to the next level. This is the visual of that, which is the virtuous cycle we're trying to create. Start with our vision, build out the product, fund the future growth through our incremental wins so that we can do a lot more, build a flywheel so that all of the clients start coming to us so we can do it again. In the middle piece is our execution lever of keep focusing on people, product, and processes. So phase two, visions, decisions, and execution again. So here we are 2 years later. We've now grown from a $2 million company to a $4 million company. We've done a lot of the things to get us in the door. How did we fund all of this growth? So we focused our marketing team on, instead of focusing on new customer acquisition, we focused on the highest expected value from from their efforts. And to me, that was expansion revenue, which had been my background in multiple companies previously, but it meant is how do you do the most with the assets that you already have? And so our first focus was on creating a new pricing page that made it a lot more clear to our clients of where they would get the value. We had it in multiple steps, which is the size of the client broken into 5 pieces, 5 options as opposed to a million, the level of enhancements, photos and videos you would put on top. And then we added professional services, realizing that at the next phase that our clients could we're no longer interested in the core premise of doing everything else by themselves. And this drove all of the value. We grew 30% that year to fund the rest of our next phase of growth. So once we did that and we started to be known as a premium brand, our focus on the product was a deeply intentional, as there's very little we could do until our product spoke for itself and we were known for it. So our vision was actually pretty similar to the same from 2018 to 2019. But now that we had the street cred and we also had the funds to build that into a brand, how do we bring it to life and really commit a new brand promise? On the product side, so each one of these is taking the original steps and basically taking them to the next level. So how do we go from great writers to great niche writers with 38 verticals? How do we focus that product to actually deliver to clients? And we'll show you a case study in a second. And then how do we build out features that are specifically focused on our target vertical of digital agencies, like a white label platform, so they can manage 100 different clients and all of their content on our platform in a friction-free way. People, you would think that this is the phase that we're hiring more executives, but we were actually still 12 people at this time. So we started with 12 and we are still 12 2 years later, despite that growth. And we were just building out more contractors to supplement the crew and still hiring young all-stars. And process, our plan was still only when necessary, which, might be my younger startup proclivities, but I know when to bring in good process people now too. So our focus was on bigger niche verticals and find clients where I can turn this pain point into a competitive advantage. So the first pain point that I was asked that I'm looking to solve was really, how do you do consistent quality content, which is interesting, but it doesn't change the fortunes of a company. What I want to do is create something that's never been done in an industry and to give my clients a competitive advantage where using my product and service gives them an ability to win in their market like nobody else. And so here's a quick case study that might sound familiar to you, because this is a legal case study that is very similar to my insurance case study earlier. There was a deep need. We have a client that's called Rankings.io. They're one of the leading legal SEO agencies in the world. They focus specifically on personal injury attorneys and create massive amounts of content for them. Their goal is to create a competitive wedge against their competition by having so much content of quality scale that they basically give their clients an ongoing competitive advantage. In order to do that, they need a lot of legally reviewed content, meaning that a lawyer has to edit every single piece. It has to be, the writers have to write for SEO, write for legal, do it at scale, do it in a way that's not prohibitively expensive. And they'd been trying to do this for years. So they'd been trying to do this work in-house where they would burn out their writers and have to just keep replacing them. It got incredibly expensive to hire legal writers. And then they would often get stolen by law firms for higher pay if they actually found good ones. It became a management nightmare. And even though they were an agency, they were spending all their time managing writers. So what we built for them, they had tried another outsourcer, which was a lot more of a command and control type of model. Here's the assignment. I give it to you, who is turning in their assignments late, missing deadlines, and also missing quality standards. And so we built, using our combination of marketplace services, a marketplace and SaaS, a two-tier model where we would use the JDs, the lawyers, just to edit pieces with our pool of 75 already proven legal writers to provide the system at scale. And so over the last several years, I think we're over 5,000 pieces of legal content that we provided them, all of them on time, all of them at budget. But it also gave rankings the ability to grow massively in their space because they're now offering a true competitive advantage to their end clients. And this is what we're trying to do. Our next step is to do this vertical by vertical. So the second big key in what we improved in the second phase was building this brand. We wanted to build a brand that we love and that acts as a magnet for our target clients. None of us really loved any of our new names or our new logos when we first got it. And our brand consultant told me that a brand is an empty vessel for you to infuse with meaning. And that is what we've focused a lot of the last couple of years focusing on, and which was really fun to do. And now Verblio has really specific meaning that's really powerful for us and our audience. So keys to branding are to choose that audience wisely. Everything that you're going to build is going to focus on them. So you've got to have a right starting place. Make sure your content resonates with your audience. I think that's a lot more obvious than the next piece, which is to make sure that your product resonates with your audience too. And to focus as much of your product, if you're on supporting your brand as you do the marketing. The last is create fun. You can have whatever brand that you want. So this is actually a competitive advantage. Give yourself permission to go off script. Marketing agencies want to have fun. They don't want to read boring content, and we don't want to create it. So we let our personality go forward. And I think that's actually been it's how I want to run a company anyway, but it gives us a pretty strong competitive advantage. Here's an example of a piece we wrote about words that should exist. This is a dictionary for COVID of words that should exist, like baby zoomers, which is one of my personal favorites, and the business mullet. This was an example of a post that I put on LinkedIn, which was one of my most successful, just showing how the Brazilian phone company completely flubbed my name, and I'm now officially known in Brazil as Steve Floxos Jesus. This is a piece that we wrote about when a third of our company went to Burning Man and 2/3 went to Inbound, and comparing and contrasting the different cults that we've been involved in, and fun stickers. Oh, this is a pharmacy vertical that I really had fun with, but was a video series we had to pull with COVID. And so here's the proof in the pudding, which is our organic traffic has gone up 300% over the last 3 years as we built this brand and found our right target audience through new channels. So where are we now? We are at this very similar vision. So it's really important to have nailed that at the beginning, but now we're amping up our niche focus. And so that vertical focus continues to expand, and we're also looking to productize unique solutions and content. And where on the people side, we have added a lot more experienced veterans who have been there and seen it before, but they all have to fit into our values and culture before we bring them on. We have hired a lot of positions a lot more slowly, making sure that we got it right. And I've accepted the fact that it's now time for process, as we brought in a process guru to really help us with that. And it's actually time to start thinking about adding fuel to this rocket ship as investment and M&A become a lot more interesting at this stage of our growth. So quick refresh, this is where where I said we would end up, which is how we got from $2 million run rate to $8 million. And that's how you get there.
How, as a bootstrap company, have you managed to build a team, or firstly attract a team and then retain them when you have no sort of like the typical I raised X from Y VC buzz kind of thing?
First is you have to make people want to work at your company. And if comp isn't the number one way to get there, then if comp isn't an option for being the number one way, then you have to find other ways. And so we built a culture that I really focused on. So going back to my ultimate Frisbee, when people ask me what my management style is, I say I want to run a company like an ultimate Frisbee team. I wanted everyone to enter on the positive. I want people to cheer for each other. I want them to be excited about each other and all show up for each other. And if you build that, just like building a great writer community, people will come to it and they'll flock to it. So the second is to make promises that you're going to keep, which is I've at every step, we had dramatically below market salaries when I came on board. And I asked some of my trusted people to trust me. I'm going to bring up your comp just as like we're all going to get there. Is time. My founders, they had a lot of forethought and they built an equity program where they were actually giving stock options in a classic VC way. So everybody would win as we grew. And I think the last one is actually really important, which is we were in a smaller market. We're here in Colorado. There is a lot, well, especially 5 years ago, there was a lot less opportunities for folks. It wasn't like the Bay Area where we were all fighting over each other. So I think that spirit and the fact that I had a culture that was really aligned with the work-life balance spirit of Colorado really helped us as well. You know, you put your word out there and you have your, do you have the biggest funnel possible where you post on every possible platform and then your focus is on like, how do you curate them, which is I think the way to do it. Or eventually is there at the right time to find a recruiter who will go out and actually target people for you? And so we had just finally reached the place where we could afford a recruiter and we really needed a recruiter. But man, those people have a lot of talent. They're expensive, but they're super talented at finding you the right people if they're just not coming to you.
Pre-recruiter, what tools did you use to find talent?
So mostly networking like crazy. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. To me, it was all about networking with all of my favorite business people, talking to them and asking them who they know that's in this layer. So it's really like word of mouth when possible. There's we have the built-in network here in Colorado too, which has been really helpful for the tech scene. The good thing about the Colorado tech scene, now we're recruiting nationally, but is that it's also tight. It's pretty easy to find the top candidates you're looking for. It's nowhere near the San Francisco Bay Area struggle where it's life or death.
Yeah, definitely. And I find like, because a lot of our team is in Canada and we'll continue building that. I think we grow to like double the team in the next year. But what I find is it's people outside of Silicon Valley resonate with different things. And if you offer that and create that environment, your chances of getting candidates are a lot. And we've seen very little churn. I've had people stayed with us for 5-6 years, right? And some of them are some of my best friends. Was there a financial metric that you used to know when you could invest more in the business?
I wish I could have been that disciplined. So I was basically looking for the profit point. My financial metric was cash. That does not sound like I was a finance major and a marketing major in my MBA program, and I definitely would have failed some finance classes if I had said that. But I needed to know if I wanted to have exactly $200,000 in the bank to make sure that I had a certain amount of payroll. And every time that I got above that, I could actually talk about the next round of investing in my next round of people. Most companies, you talk about your MRR, the amount of revenue that you're driving, and every single time you hit, another 10,000, 20,000 of MRR, you bring on a customer service manager or a director above all of them, and that's just not that's not the way it works at the early stages for me.
A lot of Bootstrap folks are like, they're, I guess, shy to pull the trigger, saying, hey, should I really spend on go-to-market? Should I really spend on marketing? They can't see because like money is not in the bank. So how do you visualize that this is going to materialize, right? So how do you look at spending money on marketing and product as a function of projected revenue, I guess?
So I had about 40% of my investment was in the tech team this is like the area where we invested the most was in our developers and our platform. About 35% of it was in our operations team in order to deliver all of the actual service, and everything left over was really for marketing and G&A. So 10% there. That really left like 15%, I think, if I did my numbers right, for marketing. Our core focus was though on content marketing. So creating great content, which gives a annuity stream for you forever, as opposed to the Red Bull of you drink it, you get the hit from paid marketing that then goes away. And so while we weren't investing as much on the dollar side, we did have a great group of writers that were helping us create this as a content creation company. We knew that content marketing had paid off for us and we would keep investing it that way. So it was a pretty low amount focused on the marketing side.
As you look at new channels, right? Like, how do you prioritize where to invest more? We talked about before we hopped on the webinar is ads are like a drug. A previous company or a competitor blew up a lot of money on ads and then sold for next to nothing. How do you look at or prioritize what marketing channels to invest on and what to double down on?
The goal is to find one good marketing channel as a small company. So for us, it was content marketing, and then what channel where we were marketing to, and then we found LinkedIn. So Rand Fishkin has this concept of the TShape Marketer, which is it's overwhelming the amount of marketing channels and marketing knowledge that all of us need to have as marketers in this day and age. So the reason it's called the T-shaped marketing is you want to go deep into at least one of them. And so that was our whole focus, was not to get distracted. We brought on in our second phase 3 key contractors, a great copywriter who just got our brand and tone that made us sound like we wanted to. A great SEO. We had an agency, now we have an in-house SEO guy, and then we have a great marketing automation person. And so, you focus on your core. I think the goal is not to blanket the entire marketing universe and to make sure that you're knocking out at least a couple areas where you have competitive advantage.
Definitely. And likewise on the product side, how big is your product team right now?
About 8 to 10 total people.
That's awesome what you guys have achieved. And when you took it over, how big was it?
3. We had no product person when I came on board, which was one of my first challenges. So to give you an example of what it means to find a utility player. So I had 3 developers. There was nobody turning these into business requirements. So there was no product person. And so I took my junior account management guy who had just come out of college. He had been a classics major, and we turned him into a product manager and asked him to figure it out, which he did. And then a year later, he took an amazingly high paid job with the VC firm. But for that year, he really helped us out and got us on our feet.
And I can't stress enough the importance of product mindset. And as founders, one of the advice I would give is you can't afford a product manager, go take a course on product management. And I would recommend reading books like Getting Real by the Basecamp folks. So Getting Real is a fantastic book. There's a great course on 1 week technical project management. I think it's 1 week tech PM. I can send out the link after. And it's a great course. We also have a promo code for it. And just to get in the mindset, right? Because as founders, what we tend to do is say, okay, just hire a dev and the CTO. But really, if you build products dev-led, you get a lot of scope creep and you get a lot of overthinking. And the business side, it doesn't start with the user experience. So I think it's really important, and that was great that you did that. How do you have a CTO right now with 10 people?
I do have a CTO. He's got a split job as a CTO and a chief operating officer. He happens to be the first guy I ever hired at LiveOps, and I was his very first ever manager coming out of school. So we used to share an office 16 years ago, and he's been a multiple CTO since then. And I'm super lucky to have hired him back on. He just started in May.
The Bootstrap company, how do you attract a CTO? So we talked about attracting other talent, but how do you attract someone like a CTO? Because far and few in between, great ones, and lots of options. How do you attract senior talent like that?
You meet them when they're 22 years old, and you indoctrinate them, and you make sure that they know that you're their best manager that they've ever worked with, and they should work with you again. I said a little tongue-in-cheek answer for CTO. CTO is one of the hardest positions I've ever hired for. I interviewed a lot of other people before I was able to go back and recruit my guy. I don't think there's the 3 hardest positions for me to hire for are CTO, VP of sales, somebody who gets your culture and also gets sales, and then product marketing, which is just spectacularly hard to hire for. So I'll share, sympathize with all of you out there if you're in a similar position. And then every single year since that first phase, which was basically very product and ops heavy, ever since then, everything has become much more balanced. So right now we're at a phase where it's about a third, a third, a third. And what I envision is after we make it through this next year, we're finally, now that we've really hit our stride and the flywheel's working, now is time to focus more on sales and marketing. We already added 2 key sales hires just recently, starting in September. We had our first full-time external salesperson. and just our first BDR, and we'll hire 2 more people on the marketing teams. We're basically emulating the classic Series A, Series B cycle. Series B is when you hit the pedal to the metal on sales and marketing, kind of doing that just without the investor cycle.
A question here on like the freelancer side of things, right? Like, as a bootstrap company, you can scale a lot with freelancers. You talked about it. You have a great product for it. You still use a lot of freelancers in other parts of the business other than just content?
Oh yeah, we use freelancers wherever possible. We believe that where it fits into the model, we will use it wherever we can. And it's a critical part of how to grow a modern company.
What do you see next happening with you? Like, you're at 8 million going to 10 million. How much longer do you think you're going to bootstrap, and should you?
Oh man, that is tell you what, I'm doing my planning process for 2021 right now. Right now it's working. So I've always said that if we found a way to really put that money to good use of how we were going to accelerate rapidly, every dollar that came in was going to turn to 10 going out, we would take it. And I think we're pretty dang close to that.
Thank you so much, Steve. I learned a ton and hope to meet in person someday. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for coming.
I need some traction.